Hello and welcome to A Gypsy Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us for a couple of seconds and I'll tell you why May 18th and November 2nd have become such important dates. And we're back.
Okay, hi, we're back. So, we're going to talk about May 18th and November 2nd.
We are indeed, yeah. In the context of the time of that Fenn's treasure has been out there, May 18th and November 2nd are what I think of now as inflection points. And we're going to talk about those in just a little bit, but let's do some housekeeping.
Okay. Yes.
Do we have anybody for moderator?
Well, so far we have OG Slap Slap in the house.
Hey, what up, my homeboy?
Waiting for a volunteer, but we're buffering, so. Anyway, what else?
You know what? I'm going to go over to the, I'm going to go over, oh, I can't.
What? Go over to
I
what?
don't know why you're buffering.
I don't
It bothers me that you're buffering.
Well, I'm in the house. Wi-Fi. I don't know.
Yeah, but you're on Video Tarot 2. Video Tarot 2. All right, well, let's go ahead with what we need to do anyway. And that is, number one, if you'd like to volunteer for moderator, let us know. You know what you better do?
What's that?
If this is going to keep doing this to you.
I can still see the chat.
Oh, okay. If you'd like to volunteer for moderator for this chat to avoid trolls, we'd appreciate it.
Troll alert.
Shelley can appoint you as a moderator from here. There is a super chat feature that I still don't quite understand, so I'm going to let Shelley explain it to you.
I understand.
Well, yeah, but you're better at this.
It's new to us, so it's an opportunity for you to send us a tip. If you'd like to have your comment or question featured in a highlighted box, and if you do that as well, we'll make sure that we do ask and answer anything that you do comment in there, rest of the chat.
Anything that's highlighted.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to see them on there?
Yes.
Okay. And then last, we'd appreciate it if we'd like you as much as possible to stay on the topic that we're discussing today. And if you have a question for us about the topic, begin your question with AGK so that we know you're asking us and not just asking the other chat members in the room. And we're going to reserve the Q&A till after the presentation. The presentation should last 15 to 20 minutes, and then we can open up Q&A. Up until that time, you guys are welcome to chat amongst yourselves and have a conversation amongst yourself. As a matter of fact, we'd appreciate it if you did. Okay? So let me go on and tell you what we think about the two, what I refer to now as inflection points. And that is not to say that there haven't been other inflection points in this chase. I thought the presentation at Moby Dickens back in 2013, which by the way was also on November 2nd, 2013, was also an inflection point. And I think the reason was Fenn decided he was going to open up and let the world feel more comfortable about where this chase was. Now, at the time, he was also trying to sell another book, Too Far to Walk. But what's important about these two inflection points is, number one, they both occurred this year, May 18th, 2017, and November 2nd, 2017. And I'm going to let Shelley tell you. Shelley was at both events, and I'm going to let Shelley tell you about her perceptions of what happened on May 18th.
May 18th, we went to the screening of The Lure in Santa Fe at the Center for Contemporary Arts. We went in early because we wanted to do an interview with the director of the film, Thomas Leach, and there was also scheduled to be a after interview and afterwards Q&A with Diana Taylor as the moderator, interviewing Thomas Leach
About the film.
about the film
Yeah.
Velour. There were a lot of Forrest Fenn's family was there. His friends were there. Thomas McGarry.
Michael McGarity.
Michael McGarity.
Douglas Preston.
Was there because he's very involved with the center.
Yeah.
And I believe he's the one that got Diana to come because she's also on the board for the center. And then there were a lot of searchers there because there were searchers in the film. And they were, of course, wanted to see Forrest as well.
Now, the fact that there were searchers there was not unusual. Of course, Sasha, Desert File, a couple of other people were in the film, so it was there. But I knew from beforehand, because I was informed, that there was a 35-sized or ticket-sized section up front that had been reserved by Forrest, and with the understanding that he was going to present those tickets to people that he was comfortable with and friendly with and familiar with, and that's exactly where he was, his daughters were, where Shiloh was, where
the fact that there were searchers there.
McGarity was, Douglas Preston was, so they were in the VIP section towards the front. Diana Taylor is a highly regarded documentary maker. She's worked for everybody from PBS to National Geographic. She now lives in Santa Fe. She's retired to Santa Fe. She does some work, but nothing of the grade that she used to do. She's also an Emmy Award winner, and I believe she's also a Oscar Award winner. So she's pretty highly regarded in the film industry and probably the perfect person to interview Thomas. Now, there's been a couple of questions, and I'll address those right now since this is not what it's about. There have been a couple of questions about why Thomas hasn't released the lure into the public. And we talked to him. I exchanged emails with him and asked. And the answer is that he's still in what filmmakers call the looking for money phase. And you do that by entering the various film festivals, submitting your film to the various festivals, and you hope you get somebody interested in a bigger project, etc., etc. Once you go public with a film, you can't enter it in festivals anymore, and he knows that. So he still, the closest you're going to get to see the film is on festivals. Then he'll probably release it to the public on one of the more, one of the forums like Amazon, something like that. But the last time we talked with him, which has been within the last month, it's that he's dealing with festivals. So we had this May 18th event, and then, so the plan was the screening of The Lure, Diana interviewing, after the screening, Diana interviewing Thomas, and then a small after party right there at the Center for Contemporary Arts. Then
they began the interview portion of the evening, and Diana asked Forrest Fenn to come to the front and sit with them and answer questions as well. And Forrest was not prepared for that. He had not been asked in advance. He had just planned to watch the movie and watch the interview and then go home. So he said no. She cajoled and reminded him that his whole family was there, his friends were there. It wouldn't be anything unusual for him to just come up and answer a few questions, and he should feel comfortable with that. Again, he said, no, thank you, I don't want to, I'm not prepared. And she again dragged him to the front.
Yeah, she basically went up and pulled him out of his seat.
So then at that point, he was a good sport about it and did his best to answer questions. But he was not prepared, and he was not really wanting to do that.
So as this happened, have we got a moderator yet? Anybody want to volunteer for a moderator? Let Shelley know so she can mod you. So at this point, Shelley and I were both there. I had taken my Lumix camera, which is a Micro Four Thirds SLR, but it shoots video. And so Shelley started shooting from her seat with her iPhone. I jumped out of my seat, went over to one side of the auditorium for a clearer shot, and I turned on the movie mode of my Lumix and I started recording it. It was handheld. And we ended up recording all the questions that Forrest was asked, and it was the two most uncomfortable people on that stage were Forrest Fenn and Thomas Leach. And my sense was that Thomas felt like his opportunity to talk about his movie had been usurped. And I don't think he necessarily blamed Forrest for that. I don't think he expected it any more than Forrest did. I imagine Diana had a plan. Maybe that was her plan, but everybody else on that stage was pretty much surprised by it. So we recorded the event. Forrest answered some questions regarding the search. As a matter of fact, all the questions, well, I shouldn't say all the questions, for the most part, the questions were directed at Forrest rather than Thomas. Diane tried to incorporate on several occasions Thomas into the discussions. So I got home that night and I realized, whoa, this was unexpected. I need to edit this video and get it up as soon as possible for the search community. And so I did. I edited that night. We got it up onto our YouTube channel. It was fine. People were looking at it, and I announced it in the various forums that I had put it up. And then I got an email from Forrest. And Forrest, I won't use the exact verbiage because I think that's personal, but Forrest asked me to take it down. And I didn't question it. I did it. I took the video down. Of course, that raised furor on the various forums. And what I did was I promised everybody, well, I'll get a transcript of it. And if you'll send me an email, I'll send you the transcript. And that, of course, raised a whole other level of ire that I was somehow trying to control the situation and that there were answers in there that I wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So in the meantime, I'm exchanging emails with Forrest, and they're getting progressively angrier. Somehow or the other, he believed mistakenly that I was involved in the process that resulted in him being on the stage. Did I select Diana? Who said she could be there? Whose idea was that? As if I knew in advance. I had no more knowledge of this event than anyone else who attended the event. I planned for it. We had cameras on hand. We were there actually to interview Thomas Leach, which we did, and it was a great interview. He was very open, and if you want to know more about his film, look at the interview that Shelley did with him that's on our YouTube channel. But over a period of about 3 days, I got these progressively more, concerned, disturbed. He was upset. Emails to and the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was he had gotten on somebody's email list, and they basically sent him a phishing email, and he wrote me about it, and the question he asked was, how did they get my email address? And I wrote back and said, basically, Forrest, your email address is all over the internet. So anyway, I went and did that. And then about a month after that, I had a conversation with him, and I asked if it was okay if I broke up the questions, leaving out the material in between, and just put the questions up. So that's what eventually did. There were 8 or 9 questions. I put them up as separate Q&As, used whatever footage I could from Shelley's phone, from my G7, no lighting, no microphones, no nothing. We were dealing with whatever was the ambient situation there. And he seemed to be okay with that. And I should tell you that before that, he was upset over how poorly he looked. And I think that was from the result of the surprise. His hearing aid wasn't working correctly. Diane wasn't helping because she was on the wrong side of the hearing aid, so the questions she asked. So somebody would ask a question from the audience, Diane would repeat it, he couldn't hear it, so he'd have to turn to Thomas to ask him to repeat the question, and it was pretty much not a good place for him to be.
You could use words.
And I didn't realize it then, but over the next several months, I noticed that he pulled away from the chase. He had up until May 18th, and I can point to that as the date, he had been publishing about a scrapbook a day in some cases. There was a couple of weeks in which he published 4 or 5 of his scrapbooks in 1 week period. Then all of a sudden that stopped. You'd see him occasionally popped up. The last thing that he had gone to, I think, was Fenbury in April. He made a
It was
couple.
June.
I'm sorry, in June. So he was there. He promoted the new book, but that was it. There was just not a lot of activity from him in a lot of other respects. Then, of course, the announcement of the new book came, and the release, and that pretty much stayed that way until Douglas Preston released, or Forrest released on behalf of Douglas Preston, the foreword to the new book. And of course, that created a whole new furor, and honestly, I just made fun of it because I knew what it was and knew what it looked like, and to me, it looked like a foreword to a new book. So all these plans were made, and that's about right. Right? Is there anything that you'd add to that? You'd say is different from how I explained it?
No.
So over time, as I analyzed what happened on May 18th, I realized, and I shared with people. As a matter of fact, I put it on, I think on Chase Chat, and literally for the anger it caused, I had to take the thread down. So I had this sense that something had happened on May 18th, and that this at the time 86-year-old man had made a conscious decision about his position in the context of the chase. And then to me, it was reinforced by the amount of inactivity between other than Fenbury between May 18th and November 2nd. Then, of course, November 2nd, the foreword to the book is published. That creates a whole new upsurge. The November 2nd date is announced, and people get excited. And I don't know how many, literally hundreds of questions we got from people after they found out we were streaming it. They asked, "Could you ask this question?" And it was pretty much all the questions that everybody has asked about Forrest, of Forrest about the search. And unfortunately, on my part, I made the mistake of suggesting that idea. And that was a mistake because it just generated, as usual, far more than I could have ever imagined was possible in this thing. So we got to the event on November 2nd. We got there earlier because we had to set up the stream. We knew that people weren't going to be allowed in at 4:30. I spoke with Dorothy and told her we'd be there at 1. She was okay with that because we had to set up, and she had put us in a very specific place. And when we first agreed to all this, we went to visit with them to test equipment, and they wouldn't let. They were so busy. Testing of our stuff was not possible, and so I had to test it in that time as well. That's why we got there at 1 o'clock, set up, started the testing. Took us a couple of hours. Then Shelley and I went over to the Thunderbird to visit with folks there. Came back, and people started coming in 4:30. And oops, just there should be a volume thing.
Diane wasn't helping because she was on the wrong
Oh, that's
side.
interesting. I'm sorry I put it upside down. Did I? Okay.
That's fine.
So at 4:30, people started coming in, and they had people set in the front part of the store before they started letting them into seating. At 4:30, the Nightline crew showed up. They were a little bit late, and they had to set up. But at 4:30, they started letting people in. Forrest had already come in before that. Actually, he came in the back door. We saw him. We talked to him for a little bit, and I could tell he was feeling good. I mean, you could just tell that he was in very good spirits. He went out into the crowd, and I followed him with my still camera and took some pictures of him interacting with the crowd. Again, he seemed very comfortable. The crowd was very appreciative. Nobody pressuring him for answers to questions, just kind of there looking forward to him signing his books. He talked with a little girl. He's always been very good with children. And then he came back in, he sat on the stage, and he sat there while everybody was doing final prep, testing the sound, and he did some selfie taking with various people. Then people started flowing in, and there were kind of two sections. One section was directly in front of where we had established our camera position, and that was kind of what I'd call the VIP section. And a lot of those tickets were the same ones that had the VIP section on May 18th at the Center for Contemporary Arts. And they were mostly searchers. Laureen Mills was there, Lou and Susan, his daughters, Jessica Jenkins, who did the editing, who's a friend of ours. So all the people, and that was kind of in a section of about 30 people big, right in front of where our camera was. And then everybody else was in seats going all the way back towards the front of the store. And that was a lot of people. There was definitely, I thought, definitely more than 46, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there, and they all seemed to be very good spirits. So the event started, and Shiloh was managing the interaction. They talked for a while. Doug talked for a while. Turned it back to Forrest, and then they started the Q&A, which I thought, which Shiloh did very good. Shiloh became kind of the bodyguard, right? He was managing the interactions, and early on, so the first question was by the guy that calls himself Tom Terrific, and he was actually standing right next to me, and I can't remember his search. It was something about the keyword, maybe? No, I can't remember his question, but he asked the question, and Shiloh looked at Forrest and asked him something about whether or not he wanted to ask search-related questions. They did not answer Tom's question, and then they went to the audience. And then the audience started asking questions that were, generally speaking, not search-related, but related to kind of their perception of their relationship with the search. And occasionally they'd get a question out. I've been collecting rocks at all the locations that I've gone to look for your treasure. I've labeled each one of them, and one day I'm going to ask my daughter to take all those rocks back to their locations. Do you have any special locations, etc.? So the one that I found most interesting was the young woman who asked the question about the keyword. And again, I'm going to have to paraphrase her. You can see the video. And she said something like, a lot of people are talking about the keyword. You mentioned that people were not focusing on the keyword. And then she asked, is that keyword in the poem? Well, I think everybody has always assumed that the keyword is in the poem. I assumed it was. What was interesting is Shiloh turned to Forrest. Forrest said, "What'd she say?" And Shiloh said, "She wants to know who your stylist is." And most people thought that had to do with his hair. A stylist in the movies scale of things, a stylist is a person who handles your entire look. And everybody laughed. And I think Forrest took the question seriously because he hadn't heard the real question about the keyword. And he responded with, "Nobody's asked me that question since I was 2 years old," or something like that. And so Shiloh, I thought, allowed him to believe that this question had nothing to do with the search for treasure. And that for me was a really interesting point because I started evaluating that night on a whole different set of criteria. And what I realized is that that Forrest, prior to this event, had made a second conscious decision. And that second conscious decision led to where he is, where, in my opinion, remember, these are all our opinions. This is not the result of a conversation that I've recorded with Forrest Fenn. These are my opinions and observations. Our opinions and observations. And what I realized was that Forrest had made another conscious decision. And the conclusion I came to is based upon the fact that Forrest is now 87 years old. And to me, based on where he is right now in 2017, as opposed to where I first saw him in 2012, he's aged. The 5 years between 2017, 82, and I'm sorry, 2012 at 82 and 2017 at 87 are noticeable, especially when it comes to things like his hearing and his mobility. The second thing is Fenn's priority has always been his family. The treasure hunt is not his priority. It is an avocation. It is a hobby. It is something that he wanted to do to establish his bona fides and his legacy. But his first priority has always been his family. In Fenn's perception, I believe he has provided the search community, us included, with everything we need to find that treasure if we are smart enough. Everything we need to know is in the poem. The hints are in the book. He's said that dozens, if not hundreds of times in the past 7 years. So I believe that Fenn is done. I think Forrest Fenn is done with this treasure hunt. I think he's going to retire from the chase. He's going to step back. He's going to focus on his family. He's going to let it take whatever course it takes. If it is found, okay. If it is not found, okay. But in my opinion, we're not going to get much else except the occasional, hi Dale, how are things going on the blog? And I may go to Fenbury things from Forrest. So I guess if I had any recommendations for anyone, did I actually put recommendations in? Yeah. Recommendations. Disassemble the poem. You have another winter to do it. Nobody has found it yet. In my opinion, nobody's even close, including us. Disassemble that poem and get yourself a good map in Google Earth and start putting those clues together, at least the first two clues, Warm Waters Halt and Canyon Down. Forrest has said more than once, and once referring to a little girl in India, that she can figure out the first two clues. That tells me that you can pinpoint Warm Waters Halt and Canyon Down. After that, you're going to have to be boots on the ground. So that's our position on the matter, would you say?
Sure. So,
is there anything that you would disagree with what I've said? I guess I'm going to do a Rachel.
well, and I don't disagree. I just think it's basically he loves to talk to people, but he doesn't want to talk about the treasure anymore. The people who came up to him wanted to show him things. Wanted to have. One guy came up to him with a book he wanted signed. It was Did you see that? It was a second edition of.
Thomas. No. I'm sorry. Mark Twain's. Tom
Sawyer?
Tom Sawyer.
Yeah. And he wanted Forrest to sign it. And Forrest's like, you don't want me to sign that. That's valuable.
Right.
And that's not my book. But he's like, no, I really, really want you to sign it. So he did. And he signed a few other things. And people would show him things. Kids brought him some stuff. He loves that stuff. But he doesn't want to sit and be grilled about the treasure. And in that regard, he is done.
The only thing I saw that was obvious to me is at some point he was talking with someone and they asked him a poem-related question and he turned his head and started paying attention. Didn't respond, started paying his attention to someone else. And for the most part, I got the sense he was there for that book. Shiloh was there for that book. Doug Preston was there for that book. I wasn't sure how surprised Forrest was when Doug Preston said there are definitely clues in this book. And I think that was Doug Preston's less than subtle attempt at helping Forrest to market this book.
Right, because unless he knew where the treasure was, he wouldn't know that.
Exactly. So I don't think that had any great meaning. The profits from this book, like the other two books, are going to someone else other than Forrest. In this case, they're going to Doug and Susan. I imagine there's some portion going. Lou and Susan, and the designers of the book, and they did a lot of design work. And if you look at the book, our friend Jessica Jenkins did the editing work. And what they basically did was they started with 40 of his favorite scrapbooks. They narrowed them down from, it's close to 200. It's in the 180s, 190s. They narrowed it down to his 40 favorite. She edited them. Jessica edited them. And then gave them back to Forrest. And then there was one that he didn't like that had to do with his writing style. So they pulled it. And it ended up with 39. By the way, I should point out, I at the event, I actually asked that question. And he gave me a complete answer. I thought there was really two interesting things about it. Number one, he gave me a complete answer. And number two, it was the only question that was asked that night that didn't have to be orally transcribed, repeated by anyone other on that stage. So he heard the question, gave me a really good answer, and then asked me at the end if he had answered it to my satisfaction. So I thought that was very nice, and I thought it was an indication of where his head was. That's what he wanted to talk about. Now, I asked that about 37 minutes into the event, and there was still another 23 left, and there were still not enough questions, I think, for his tastes and for Shiloh's tastes that related to the publishing of the new book. So we think he's done. We think he's going to go happily and with a great deal of satisfaction into the latter years of his life, and we think he's entitled to it. And we wish him Godspeed, and we'd like to say thank you. So, questions? Do we have a question?
Yeah, if you see Forrest in the future, try to keep on topics of, interests that are not the treasure, because he doesn't want to answer any more questions about the treasure.
Yeah.
And they made that very obvious.
We may see the mysterious writing questions every once in a while, but again, I don't think he's going to put a lot of time into it. I think he said several times during that event, or at least once, I shouldn't say several, that this was his last book. And I think it very well could be his last book, and I think he's okay with that. This was his 11th. He's written a dozen of them. 3 of them, or at least 2 of them, directly to one related to the chase, and then 2 follow-ons. So I don't know what else he thinks he can do that wouldn't take him away from his family.
So enjoy those videos at Collected Works in Moby Dickens from 2012, because I don't think we're going to see the likes of that again.
2012 or 2013?
2013.
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah.
Which is why, so I know we started last week by saying that we were going to talk about how Fenn answers questions, but so much had happened in the last week that I felt like we had to cover this. So next week we're going to have the conversation about how Fenn answers questions, and I believe this becomes even more important because you're going to have to deal with the material that's out there as of November 2nd. I don't think there'll be much more from Forrest. Well, I shouldn't say that, because we do have this Nightline thing coming up that hasn't been, that's in production but hasn't been published yet, so you'll have that to deal with. But I would say what you have is that, and then very few other things that you'll have available to you to analyze. So you've got what you've got, and it'll be good to evaluate how he answers questions so you don't go down any Fenn-created rabbit holes, which he is really good at doing. Okay, we got any questions?
We have lots.
Oh, great.
Let's see.
Do you have to go back? Can you go back to the beginning?
Yes, I'm going to go back.
Did you get a moderator?
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Man in the Barn.
Oh, hey, Man in the Barn. I've watched your videos. He mentioned this in his last video. He was talking about he had gotten his copy of the new Fenn book and was doing a review of it, and he mentioned a Gypsy's Kiss in the stream and suggested people go to the stream. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. I'm glad we could use you as a moderator today.
And just to address Chaz Winters, he said he was kind of disappointed in the book signing. He was hoping for more Q&A. Well, we all were.
Yeah.
But they had it very regimented. And again, Shiloh and Forrest had, towed the hard line about not asking treasure-related questions. So any questions you were going to hear that night were definitely going to be about the book or just ignored.
There had been, my sense is there had been a discussion between Forrest and Dorothy about how it was going to be managed. I think there was a discussion between Forrest and Shiloh about how it was going to be managed. And I think somewhere along the line, Doug didn't get the memo or something. He was good and he was informative. I think the thing about there's lots of clues in that new book was unexpected and probably unwanted. Yeah. I don't think Forrest, wanted that to be there. It's going to sell books. The proceeds, the profits from this book go to Lou and Susan. So it's not like Forrest is making any money on them.
Let's see. OG Slap wants to
know.
What
up, homeboy?
If let's see, how is the Cimarron River looking?
The Cimarron River for us, and I'll say this rather than the Cimarron River, the Cimarron River Canyon and how is this related to what we're talking about? I'm going to answer this because it's you. The Cimarron River Canyon for us is our number 1 spot. How's that?
Let's see.
Is that just chat?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm looking for the AGK moniker.
Well, you may look, they didn't do a very good job of using it last time, so there may be questions up there that don't have the AGK on it. Because I noticed last week's didn't either.
Okay, here's Joel Lewicki. I think he wants to keep the field level. That is why he has released Too Far to Walk and this book,
Once Upon a While.
Just a comment.
Maybe go down to the bottom and start at the bottom and work back way up, because
Some of them were not scrapbooks. Some of the chapters,
it says we're not scrapbooks.
were they not?
I guess it could be possible. It just actually they were scrapbooks. They just hadn't been published. How's that?
Where was I? This sometimes this flips up really quickly and then I miss things. Okay, let's
Oh, look, I'm not stealing your water this week.
Yay. Okay. Well, this isn't addressed to us, but I'm going to say it anyway from Matt. Fenn also said he took creative writing by using rain going to the bookstore. There was discussions in past how this could point as a hint. Yeah, he did talk about that. I think he was trying to make things a little clearer, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
let them know. Yeah, he took poetic license with a lot of things. So
Well, he's always said that he's taken poetic license.
okay, B Cross.
Hi, B.
Brian, I believe. I was surprised Forrest said it was not really raining at Borders, as he said. Did I understand him correctly that he added that simply as a matter for readers' interest?
Yes, and you'll find that in his number of stories. Forrest does two things that we've analyzed as his style. Number one, he combines memories into single stories, and number two, he embellishes them. He mentioned again that he referred to what's his name, Max, that guy here in Albuquerque, lives the old man that lives here in Albuquerque that writes, who says that fiction writers are only responsible for 15% accuracy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He cited him again, and so you can count on at least 15% of what Forrest writes is for the purposes of dramatic enhancement and is the equivalent of fiction.
Okay, and then see Joel Wiki again. Do you think his reticence to answer questions is because he is concerned that he will go off script and reveal more than he wants? Well, sometimes he gets to embellishing, as we're talking about, and he'll say things he realizes later he should not have said because they weren't true. They were just pictures in his mind, like he smelled pinon trees. Now, that's been a forever topic on all the forums since he said it, and then he's taken it back, and yet people won't let go of it. So yeah, I imagine that's a part of it, not just because he doesn't want to reveal the clues, but because he also doesn't want to say something that people are going to glom onto for the next 5 years.
I think that's the other thing too. I think you have to look at it from two perspectives. Number one, he certainly doesn't want to provide any additional hints or clues above and beyond what are already in the thrill of the chase. But I think the other thing too is that he also knows that the community can interpret almost anything he says as a clue, and as a perfect example of that, look at how much time was spent in the forums before the publishing of the book, but after the cover had been released, the amount of time and energy that was spent in analyzing that cover, assuming that somehow or the other Fenn had drawn it, etc., etc., and then you find out both not only at the book signing but in the book he had nothing to do with the cover. That was somebody else's idea, and at most he probably said, "Okay, let's go with that." So he also, in addition to knowing he may reveal something he doesn't want to reveal.
He said something about a stick figure though. He wanted a stick figure.
Well, because he draws in stick figures.
And then they put a belt buckle on the stick figure.
Yeah. But in addition to the possibility that he may say something that he doesn't, that becomes revealing in a sense. He also doesn't want to say anything that can be interpreted as a clue, because he knows when it's discovered that it's not a clue or a hint, it's just going to create more frustration in the community.
Right. Let's see. Cindy Gass, have you met Shiloh previously?
Hi, Cindy. Say hi to Tammy.
Have you met Shiloh previously? And do you think Fenn's children or grandchildren have had any interest in searching for the treasure? And here's another one that's related to Shiloh, from Ashley Bergstrom.
Hi, Ashley. Our friend from Facebook.
Or do
She
we...
must be taking off work because she says she usually can't make it. So thanks for joining us today. Let me answer. Are they both the same?
They're both about Shiloh, so I thought...
Well, let me answer first because there's two questions to that first one. Could you repeat that first one?
Sure. Have you met Shiloh previously, and do you think Fenn's children or grandchildren have had any interest in searching for the treasure?
I have met Shiloh previously, and I've communicated with him, not only met him, but communicated with him by email. And as you can tell by how he responded to me in the event, he knows me as well. But I don't think I have ever had a conversation with Shiloh that related to the search. And I get the sense from him and from his Fenn's daughters and the conversations I've had with them that they have absolutely no interest in this. They are well off. They are taken care of. The two girls married well. They have whatever Fenn is going to leave behind. He put them through college, so they have degrees if they have the ability to work. They're in a very good position. They all hold property. Fenn, the proceeds from the sale of Too Far to Walk go to a trust fund for Fenn's grandchildren. So I do not get, there has never been any interaction that I've had with any of Fenn's family members, including Peggy for that matter, that indicates to me that they have any interest in any of this, as long as it doesn't interfere with them having a husband, father, and grandfather. I think that's when it would get spooky. What's Ashley's?
Or do we think Shiloh will keep a presence with searchers going forward?
That's hard to say. I would say not. Shiloh, as you may already know, has been put in charge of Fenn's company, the Old Santa Fe Trading, what is it? Old Santa Fe
Trail.
Land and Cattle Trading Company or something like that. There's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Shiloh
That's
is
the
actually
publishing company.
the publishing company. Shiloh is running the publishing company for him. The other company is, I think, a limited liability company between him and Charme that was established a long, long time ago. So I don't know. I guess he could, but I don't see any reason why he would. He's never indicated that kind of interest. I think what's more important to him is the health and well-being of his grandfather. And I think to that extent, I think if Fenn goes to Fenbury next year, Shiloh will be there. He'll drive him there. He'll cover him. He'll, act as his subtle bodyguard. I don't think he needs to defend Fenn, but I think he'll be involved in that way. But I don't see Shiloh replacing Fenn as the face of the chase, if you will.
For some reason it pops up, as I'm trying to scroll.
Oh, that's because somebody
Where'd
else adds a
Where did
question
it
to it.
go? I was just reading something. Okay.
Yeah.
Almost there. Stephanie 30 Acre.
Hey, Stephanie! Wow.
Kelly, his daughter, told me she went on a search, but she wouldn't say where though.
Ah, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd guess someplace in the mountains north of Santa Fe.
And
Because they have property. They actually have property that one of his daughters is married to, and I think it's Shiloh's father, the Old family. They have property up in Pecos. So.
Gallant 171, what kind of clues, if any, do you think are in the new book?
I don't think there's any. Shelley and I bought a copy of the book. We're going to read it, but I don't believe there's any clues in the new book.
Let's see.
But like Too Far to Walk, it's written by Forrest Fenn, and he's a damned interesting writer. And I don't know, he mentioned one who he envied. He mentioned someone that he envied in terms of their writing ability. I envy Fenn. One of these days, Shelley and I often talk about writing my memoirs, and I would like to write a memoir as well written as is Fenn's, and I'm going to have Shelley edited because she's a hell of an editor.
No, you said bad word again.
What? Oh, we'll bleep it out. Sorry.
Man in the Barn. Let's see. Well said. During the release...
He's our moderator, right?
Yes. During the release of the Once Upon a While, the Forrest Fenn team started referring to Too Far to Walk as a memoir. I always heard it as a scrapbook. Do you see that as something to pay attention to?
No, I think you can accept, and I heard it referred to, I can't remember who said it this last time, but it was referred to as the Third Fan Memoir. I think it's on the cover of the book, right? Is it
Yeah,
someplace on the book?
Yeah.
On the inside of the book?
Yeah, it's right in the
So-
inside where he signed
yeah.
it.
The Third Fan Memoir.
Right.
So I think it was those of us in the community. Fenn was writing 3 memoirs: The Thrill of the Chase, Too Far to Walk, and now Once Upon a While. We've interpreted those in a variety of ways. The book that has the clues in it, the book that has more hints in it, and now the book that tell us which museum parking lot to search in. They're 3 memoirs. And I've always thought of them that way, and I believe Fenn has always thought of them that way. And I think that's one of those other things that, for his purposes, he'd like to get back to. He wrote 3 highly regarded memoirs, and that's what he would like them to be. And he would like to sell them because all the profits go to various people that isn't him, that aren't him.
Michael D. Do you think Forrest Fenn's last book will be the unauthorized biography?
No, I think this is Forrest's last book. I don't think we'll see a last memoir. Like I said, I think he's effectively, I'm going through this myself where you say, okay, I'm retired. And then I have to remember to do things that retired people do and should be doing and enjoying. And I'm actually having to learn that. I'm actually having to learn that spending a little time at the botanical gardens, taking pictures and doing nothing else, without selling them or something like that, that I have to do that. And I think that's what he's doing. I think he's retiring. I think whatever he does now will be for his personal pleasure, and with the assurance that it's not going to interfere with his personal satisfaction and whatever satisfaction is derived by his family.
And I think your question highlighted that. He went through all of the scrapbooks and narrowed them down to 40. So he didn't want to publish the other ones. He wanted those.
Right.
Those are the ones he chose out of everything that was already published. So that's it.
Well, he needed to get down to the 369 rule. Plus, he mentioned baseball. I didn't know he was a baseball fan. That's a very 369 game.
I want to know if you've read anything from the book yet.
I haven't, only in the sense that I've read a lot of the scrapbooks, and I'm assuming that a lot of the scrapbooks, but it's literally sitting over there on my coffee table. And between the time we got the book and now, I've been busy with several other projects, including yesterday having to drive to Santa Fe for my daughter. So.
Yeah, a new baby in the family.
Oh yeah, I have a new grandbaby number 10, Everly James English. She was born on Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
She was 9 pounds 6 ounces and 21.5.
Wow, she's a big girl.
She's a big girl, and born to my daughter number 3, child number 5, and she's just beautiful. And I don't know if you know me well enough to know I just love daughters and granddaughters. I'm just a big fan of girls in the family.
Oh, you just love all babies.
So yeah, I'm I shouldn't say a new granddad. I'm an old granddad with yet another baby on the list. So we've been very busy with that.
So Eric, ask us again next week, and Toby will have read. He wants to know what you thought of the chapter on the spices.
Okay, here's what I'll do. Give me a week to read it and to write a review, and how about the show after next? We'll do a review of the book. How's that?
Somebody wants me to take you shirt shopping. I like Toby's shirts.
Okay, so I have 10 of these shirts. 5 of them are white and 5 of them are tan. Actually, I have 15. 5 white, 5 tan, and 5 black. So it's not like I need new shirts. I just happen to like these shirts because they have...
They're actually good for fishing too, because
Yeah.
they have this thing, right?
They're actually fishing shirts, right? That's what this is all about, to hold your rod while you're changing flies. They have a little hooky thing on the back. So, yeah, and what's bad about me, Shelley will tell you, is that when I find something I like, I buy a dozen of them.
Saves time in the morning figuring out what to wear.
Right. I also like shirts with epaulets, so I have a dozen white epaulet shirts in there too. So.
Let's see, Jazz Winners.
Hey, Jess.
I do believe there is a chest in Ben on the Chase, boots on the ground twice, and like Mr. Fenn, but after researching him 2+ years, he does say he is a charlatan and storyteller in FBI scandal. What do you think?
I think all of those things are true, but I also think he hid a treasure, and he wrote the clues to the treasure in the poem. And I have to believe that, otherwise I'm wasting a lot of my time. If I come to the conclusion that Fenn is a charlatan and he's just misled us this whole time, then I'll be angry, but I'll stop looking for the treasure. I'm still looking for the treasure, and I bring Shelley and her husband along to look for that treasure. I firmly believe that he hid it, and that all the other things are put in context, and they're really things that indicate to me that you just have to be very cautious when he says things. So,
Eric wanted you to know that the writer's name is Max Evans.
Max Evans. I actually have one of his books down here. We were invited. There was a friend of mine, Sean Riley. He was one of my students over at the public access stations, and he was a friend of Max's and realized that he was getting on in years, and he wanted to do a series of interviews with him, and he asked me to shoot them for him, and he could not convince Max to do it. And I wasn't disappointed, but I was looking forward to the opportunity because he's got a lot of, he's a Old West kind of guy. He's got a myriad of stories, and he remembers a time when people were still carrying, 6 guns on their hips and riding around on horses.
6 of them.
Yeah. So.
Mr. G says, what is with this Kyle guy? I don't think this one pertains to this particular, but we can give our opinion anyway. What is with this Kyle guy that has posted a series of videos about the treasure being at San Lazaro and some secret book about lost kivas?
Yeah, that was the Lost Kiva book that was written by one of the archaeologists that Fenn had recruited to work on the excavation of San Lazaro, depending on how you say it. And afterwards, Fenn gave him permission. It was several years after Fenn published his book. He gave him permission to write his interpretation of the findings, his findings, conclusions, and recommendations on the archaeological excavation of San Lazaro. He wrote the book, and then he had a very small printing of it, and the printing was distributed to colleges, universities, and libraries, mostly in the West and Southwest. And so there was a big thing about that, and this one young man on YouTube has published, I don't know, I'm going to say it, he's up to 7 or 8 videos, in which the imagery is basically him going through this one book and claiming that it has the key to where the treasure was hidden. It was not written by Forrest. Forrest had to, of course, approved its publication because the results, what was published, was the results of the effort of this archaeologist working with Forrest on the excavation. But as I wrote to him, somebody asked me to take a look at it and tell him what I thought. And my response was, I thought that was the worst 30 seconds I had ever wasted because the first thing he says is the treasure is hidden in one of the kivas in San Lazaro. San Lazaro is in the Galisteo Basin, so it's not in the mountains, and it's not north of Santa Fe. And it's now on private property because Forrest this last year sold the property to someone else because he didn't have the time or energy to continue the excavation. So all of those things tell me it's not there, and therefore, Kyle,
sorry.
I'll say it again, sorry. There's nothing there.
Cindy Guest. I believe Mr. Fenn's facial expression said he knew Preston was going to say the new book contains vital clues. If this is true, do you think we should not believe that it does contain clues? Not believe it does contain. So we shouldn't believe it contains clues because of Forrest's face.
You're better. I was focused on making sure I got a good shot, so I didn't see Forrest's face. I'll have to look at it. I don't think. I think there must have been a discussion based on the video afterwards. To me, it looked like Forrest had warned Douglas before the event not to say that, and Douglas ignored him. As to whether or not there's clues, it is our opinion there are no clues in the new book.
Yeah, and I think Forrest probably
That
told
clues,
him that because he didn't want to talk about the treasure. And if Preston brings it up, then that opened up the door for everybody else.
That opened up the whole book.
Let's see. Mr. G. Toby, do you think there is anything in the poem that needs to be deciphered according to a technical scientific approach?
Oh, interesting. If geography is a science, and I think it's it doesn't fall under the sciences. It falls under the, history, geography, anthropology. What do they call those? Not the humanities, the civil studies. The answer is no. I don't believe it is, and the reason is if it was that simple, it was either scientific or encrypted and codified. I think it would have been broken by now. I think it is the equivalent of metaphysical. It has deeper meaning than each of the clues is there, but I don't think it's of a scientific meaning. And honestly, I spent a lot of time with that at the beginning because that was my first approach to all of this as I entered into our search for the treasure, because that was my background, was that. And if it just doesn't work. The anomalies are too great for it to be encodified or scientific. I think it is metaphysical, meaning that is beyond what he describes and has to be interpreted. I think it's important to recognize that I believe you can pinpoint warm waters with geographic specificity, and that where warm waters halt will be associated with a canyon town. He has so much as said that with his answer to the little Indian girl. I don't know if they asked him about the Indian girl, but he said a little girl in India, because she's limited in her resources, would be able to reconcile the first two clues.
This is from Michael D. Can you chase down the use of twos in some future vlog? Number 2.
The number twos?
Some future vlog, that's a suggestion.
I don't know. I'm I'll take a look at it, but I'm a 369 kind of guy when it comes to Fenn. 3s and 9s especially. I think he's a 3-9 guy. That's why there's 39 chapters in the new book. No, I'm just teasing. I think that's...
Lots of congratulations on the baby.
Thank you. We're very proud of her. She's an adorable baby. She looks... interestingly, my daughter is beautiful. But this baby looks like her daddy. She looks... they posted a picture of her going to the first doctor appointment. She's 3 days old, and she looks like she's a month. She's just humongous. But her face is her daddy's face. She's got a little facey, mouthy face, but just real cute. All right, change subject.
In your opinion, the subtle hints... This is from Steve Rempel. In your opinion, the subtle hints in The Thrill of the Chase are hints to all the clues in the poem, or just Where Warm Waters Halt, or Home of Brown, or The Blaze. What are your thoughts?
I think the hints, what we refer to as the aberrations, are not necessarily references to points in the poem. We think they are equally divided between what I said earlier, a metaphysical understanding of the poem, and, even greater than that, a metaphysical understanding of Forrest's behaviors, because I've always believed that was the key. And I think the aberrations that I've seen in the poem relate more to Forrest's character and behaviors than they do to specific locations.
Let's see. Be cross. Brian again. AGK, have you ever seriously considered the Santa Cruz Lake area for the treasure?
I think we did. I do a lot of fishing at Santa Cruz Lake. There were a couple of things. Number one, it's very trafficked. Number two, somehow or the other, whenever somebody talks about Santa Cruz Lake, they talk about the waterfall. And the waterfall at Santa Cruz Lake is not easy to get to. It's a very difficult hike. And you have to be prepped for it, and it's highly trafficked. So we considered it and discarded it early on.
Okay, I have one more question, and then we're going to close it out. We're at our hour, so I'm going to give you one more question.
Do we have more questions?
We have a few more, but one that relates to this topic.
Oh, okay.
So then we're going to close it out because we have an interview.
Oh, that's right. Wait, Shelley's got her interview coming.
So
do you want to talk about? Well, answer the question, and then you've got the.
Mm-hmm. Mary Green, did you guys get to question?
Hi, Mary.
You're going to have to stop that.
I know them.
Well,
We're always
I'm
communicating.
talking.
Okay, excuse me. All right, you're right.
Did you guys get to question Fenn during the book signing?
Hi, Mary.
That's appropriate.
I did. I got. If you're talking about during the book signing, no, we were focused on. There was a really long line for the book signing. A really long line. Literally, everybody was there, got in line, and by that time, we had been active since 10 o'clock in the morning. Packing equipment, staging, packing equipment into the truck, driving from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, setting up, testing, shooting photos at Thunderbird, coming back to shoot photos at Collected Works, doing the event, and when it ended, we still had 1 hour's worth of breakdown, loading, putting it onto a cart, loading it into the truck, and driving back to Albuquerque. So
and we went to the after thing too.
Oh, right. And then we went to shoot some more pictures over at the La Fonda for the after party. So standing in line waiting for a signature or a conversation with him just wasn't in the book for us. It was just, by that time we were like, let's hit the road here.
Yeah, and they weren't answering treasure questions. It was obvious.
No.
So I don't think it would have been worth our time.
Yeah. The sense that you got that is nobody, if anybody asked treasure questions at the book signing, during the signing of the book, they didn't get answered.
Plus the fact that if we really, really wanted to talk to Forrest, we could make an appointment and go see him. Yes. And so, why stand in line for a couple of hours? And
He likes selling. He doesn't.
Well, we're within distance, and he's a kind person in that regard. So, going on to our announcements.
What?
Somebody wants to know.
Is that the treasure kitty?
The treasure kitty wants to know, has that treasure been found yet?
Treasure number 284 has not been found, at least not to the best of our knowledge. We have not been informed it's been found. We do have some treasure hunters that have gone on to step 2 to get, after they've validated it. We have treasure hunters that have decrypted the location and have gone to step 2 to find out what else they need to know to find the treasure, but we have not been informed that the treasure is still found. Or has been found, rather.
Okay. So Treasure Kitty wants to know, are there going to be more treasures hidden anywhere anytime soon?
I don't know. I kind of thought that there would be, but there doesn't seem to be an interest in it.
Okay.
So we'll just have to make a decision. Maybe we'll start off next season with a little treasure hunt, but there doesn't seem to be the kind of interest that I thought there might be. Why do you still have his...
Treasure Kitty sad.
Do you want me to cut those off?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. It's mint in box.
Oh, okay. So minted bucks.
This is a Steif.
A what?
It's a Steif.
I won't even
It's a
ask.
Steif puppet. If you're interested in bidding on it, it's $1,000 starting bid. It's a Steif puppet.
Nice.
Not in our. Purchased it from the factory in Germany. So, anyway, also wanted to tell people about my new channel.
Go ahead. This is
All
fun.
right. So, as you know, I have a channel called Wisdom Included. It's specifically for women. Well, I went over my analytics, my Google and YouTube analytics with my channel, and I found that my subscribers currently are at 60% men and 30% women, or somewhere around there. So for the men who are loyally watching my channel for women, I'm going to create a new channel just for men. So head on over to that. It's going to premiere next week, and I will give you the link next week so you can find it. And it'll be for men. It'll be about relationships, and it'll be about women and what I know about women and how I feel and what I like and things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's all I have to say about that.
And let me tell you what I have to say about it. I've known Shelley now for 5 years, and what I can tell you about her is that she's very sensitive to the state of relationships and seems to have a very good handle on them, and counsels, unprofessionally, a number of people who rely on her to give her advice on relationships. But for me, what I've always been impressed with is she knows what she likes. And she's always been very good at telling Kevin what she likes. She tells me what she wants out of our business relationship. She's open and honest with it. And what I've counted on, honestly, is that I can be open and honest back to her. So if there's something that I don't agree with, or something that I don't want to do, or something that I'm not happy with, or something that I want to do, I know I can tell her that. We can talk it out, and she considers it, and then makes a decision that's in both our best interests. So I think it'll be a fun channel, and who knows, maybe you'll get 60% women and 30% men on that channel.
Who knows?
Who knows? Who thought? Okay?
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again really soon. For Gypsy Kiss the Blog, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Innes. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye-bye.